Welcome to LIS754, Systems Analysis and Design. And in this session, we're going to talk about the process by which we take the information that we've gotten through our requirements gathering process and develop the actual functions for our system. And we call this requirements processing. So we have all this data that we've gathered through observation, through interviews, through questionnaires, through analysis of the documents. We have a document that gives the broad generalities of this system, the goals of it, what it should do, the big picture. And so we have very broad generalities and we have very, very narrow individual responses. And so now it's the job of the systems analyst through the analysis process to create a set of specific functions that can be the basis for going forward in the development process. And so this is the really interesting, from my perspective, the really interesting intellectual work of the systems analyst. So we have broad generalities, we have lots of individual perspectives and data, and the idea is to consolidate this data, to find common themes, to identify things that are considered outliers. So if there's only one person who cares about a really specific function or feature, we need to say, is this important? Is this not important? Is it an outlier, or is it just an outlier, meaning it doesn't fall within the normal range of business opportunities, or is it just a singular function that's important even though one person does it? All this data needs to be synthesized, and then we need to document it, and we're going to talk about how we do that. So again, we're going to review and analyze all that input, and we want to extract a specific set of functions. And from that specific set of functions that we extract, we're going to define them. Sometimes we'll combine them into, we can combine them so that we can, if everybody is talking about how they're going to enter data, but they're entering it all just minutely differently, we can find a way that we can combine those functions together and have the system be flexible enough to take care of all those needs, but not have 15 different data entry forms. We want to share the planned features that we extract, or functions. These terms are often interchangeable, features and functions, with the business personnel, with the business leaders, with the management, and with line people to get their feedback. And we do that in a couple of ways. There's a couple of models by which we can make this communication of the feature set, of the function set, to our wider community. Whether that community is in a for-profit business, in an academic setting, in a library setting, in an education setting. And we can use something called use cases, or we can do prototypes. There are other methods. These are two of the most common in the current development organizations. These are the two most common that I see in the literature as well as in my own experience. First, we're going to talk about use case modeling. When we talked earlier in the semester, we talked about different approaches to systems analysis and design, and one of them was a user-centered process, where we want to understand the needs of our stakeholders, the people who use our system, both internal and external stakeholders, and why the system should be developed. And use case modeling goes along very well with that it's a process of thinking about the system's functions in terms of the events that people want to do, the business events. And again, we're using business to mean the processes that are the important functions of the organization. The business events, who starts these events? How are they initiated? How does the system interact with people as they do that? There's nothing specific that ties user-centered development to use cases. They're not coupled or paired, but they're highly useful together. You can use use case modeling for in any type of systems development methodology or in any type of an approach. Users can be people, users can be systems, users can be other processes. It's all it's very flexible in that. It started in object-oriented modeling that we'll talk a little bit about in a few weeks, but it has proved itself to be so useful that it's used in almost all types of development environments. It's simple, it's straightforward, it's really useful. It's really useful. It can be used with other modeling processes as well, although this really is, in my experience, what's really being used extensively. So why do we want to do this? We want to do it because it's a relatively straightforward way to capture functional requirements and functional requirements in a useful way, that is, in a way that describes the whole function, that can help us prioritize things. It assists in what's called decomposing the system. Decomposition is the process by which you take the whole and pull it into parts. It's really useful for that. So I can take a big function like security, or I could take a big function like billing, and I can decompose those into specific components. So in billing, you have things like determining the amount due, determining the billing address, determining the minimum payment. All of those are functions of the billing system, and we can make each of those a separate function that we can describe using use case modeling. It makes an easy, it simplifies communication with users because we're talking about these individual functions that people immediately can understand. Billing, data entry, requesting a bank balance. All of those kinds of things are intuitive to users. They immediately understand them. It also helps us track and control the system's development activity. So if you had a good set of use cases, you could go back to your project management plan and you could add those functions into your project plan. So do I have all the things that I need? Is the billing function complete? Yes or no? I can know that. I can manage the system by these use cases. That's very helpful for everyone. It's really helpful for management. It's really helpful for the development staff. And again, it's helpful for estimating and scheduling. And more than just the development process, it also helps at the end in defining and testing the system. So if we know that billing is supposed to work in a very specific way, and we have a use case that tells us how that's supposed to work, we can go into the new system and we can make sure that it works that way. It makes testing, it makes deciding if the system is done really useful. It helps people who develop documentation. Again, it's a guideline for how the system should work. We can trace, we can track the requirements. We can say this one's done, this one's done, this one's done, and know what has yet to be done. It helps us with our data modeling, which we're going to do soon. So if you do a good set of use cases, it'll help you with your data needs. for designing user interfaces, for designing interfaces between different systems, how we develop security, how we develop database access requirements. It's really, really, really useful. All right, so we've talked about why it's important. Let's talk about what they are. A use case is a sequence of steps that are based in behavior. What happens when I sit down as a user to use this system? I go to Land's End and I want to purchase a sweater. I go to the Land's End website. I want to purchase a sweater. What has to happen if I want to purchase a sweater? What has to happen if I don't know what I want and I just want to browse the system? These are all of the steps, automated and manual. I type something in, the system does something. I get a response from the system, I type in something else for completing a single business task. I can do this in two ways. I can use a diagram that is a graphical representation of the interactions, and a use case narrative. Often people will do these together. A use case diagram is a really nice way to begin, to just get a really rough idea of who's involved, the people that are involved, and the functions that are involved. But eventually everything needs to have a use case narrative, text that actually describes the process. We're going to start by looking at the symbols for use cases. The use case itself, the thing we're going to do, the use case is the symbol. So the use case is actually the business step, the function that we're going to do. An actor is anyone or anything that needs to interact with the system. It can be a person, it can be an organization, it can be a system, it can be a phone or a device or a keypad. It can even be time. And temporal events, so things that are triggered by time. And we will particularly look at those. I can't think of an example in any of the work that you're doing that would need a temporal event, but maybe. So this is the sample use case model. Actor 1 has a use case. Actor 2 is involved in 2 use cases. Actor 3 is involved in a third one. The normal convention for this is that primary actors are on the left and secondary actors are on the right. So if I'm actor 1 and I'm a person who sits down and wants to order a sweater from LL Bean, I do this. And then the use case can go to a secondary actor, such as the order placement service, right? So the fulfillment center, right? I place my order for my sweater, I do my browsing, I do my things, and the request goes to the warehouse people. The warehouse people package and use the system to print shipping labels and all those things. So you could have a secondary actor here that is also a primary actor. That's kind of how that's working here. And then actor 3, just another sequence. So let's talk about the kinds of actors. We're going to primarily be working with these first 2. The primary business actor, that is the person, the stakeholder that benefits from the execution of this case, right? The example here is using an employee receiving a paycheck. It could be the customer who's placing the order for a sweater. A primary system actor is the stakeholder that directly interfaces with the system. So a bank teller entering a deposit information, or the warehouse worker entering the status saying that the item has shipped, or printing the shipping label, those kinds of things. We might have external server actors. So if I'm working on a system that is going to interact with um, uh, other organizations, the credit bureau for authorizing a credit card charge, which very well may happen in our scenario of purchasing a sweater, um, and then an external receiver actor. And so I might have confused these a little bit, but overall, we have these people that are working to interacting with the systems, and we have these kinds of actors. If we were using software that manages building these visual representations of use cases, something like Microsoft has a tool called Visio, we would care about these, but in terms of what we're doing, we won't care that deeply about exactly which actor. We know we're going to have actors that are going to be doing things. We can have an association between actors and the use case in which they interact. So we would have a solid line here. So if we were in a subscription book club where we got a book once a month, or a video or some other kind of entertainment on a regular basis, the club member places an order, and the receiver is the distribution center. There's an actor who receives this information. Associations can be bidirectional in terms that they interact with each other, or unidirectional. And sometimes it depends, and you would put an arrow. So if the distribution center immediately responded and worked directly with the club member, there would be an arrow here. But this is, okay, oops. Sorry. So we're going to use these use cases to identify our requirements, to analyze our requirements. So the process is identify the business actors, identify the business use cases, construct the use cases, and document them. Seems pretty straightforward. So let's think about what it means to identify the business actors. We want to ask some questions. Who provides the data that goes into the system? Who receives the output from the system? You remember our system chart. We have input, process, and output. Who's providing input? Who gets the output? Are there interfaces to other systems? So if you've got, you may have other systems. So like going to check someone's credit, or going to check inventory, or order new inventory. So if every time somebody purchases, and this is how Walmart has made such an amazing change to the distribution system. Every time they keep such small quantities of materials on hand, every time they sell, a package of paper towels, they place a new order. Right? They're always doing that, and that's all happening automatically. So what are the interfaces required to get to other systems? Are there events that are triggered at a predetermined time? So every time at midnight, the overdue notices for books are emailed out, or bills are sent, or whatever. And who maintains the information in the system? Actors need to have a noun, or a noun phrase, so you can have multiple words. Here are a list of actors, a sample list of actors, if we were building a subscription system. A potential member, a club member, a past member, someone who is inactive. And it's nice if they are described. So you've got some of these in your stakeholders. You will be thinking about these when you are thinking about your requirements processing. Marketing. Does your organization need a marketing team? Member services, so the people who are going to provide the customer support, a distribution center for actually managing the product and shipping them, accounts receivable, the accounting part, getting money in, and then time. Right. So if when we have a set of actors, and this set will be changed and will grow over time. You can start with the simple set, and as you go forward, you can be adding to this. So then we start listing the use cases. We start thinking about the individual things that people have to do. And while we're doing this, we want to identify and document the most critical, complex, and important cases, often called essential use cases. We can do, you can do these in excruciating detail, but for what we want to do, we're going to be thinking about essential use cases. We want to think about the interactions between a user and the system, free of technology and implementation details. We do not want to say, in Google Forms, we're going to do this, or using the SQL Server database, we're going to do that. It's unhelpful at this point to do that because we want to think about this free of the technology. We want to think of think of these strictly from the functional point, not from the technology implementation point. That's a separate phase where we'll decide what the best technology is. It may be Google Forms, but if we start with that premise, we will have boxed ourselves in. So when we think about the use cases, we're thinking, what are the main tasks of this actor? And that's why we've done that requirements gathering. So we should have a list of main tasks for the actor. What information does the actor need? What information does the actor provide? So I'll have to provide, if I'm being a new member in that club, I'll have to provide my name, etc. I would need to know the different programs that I could sign up for, etc. The use cases should be named with a verb: submit subscription order, become a member, activate my account, those kinds of things. Verbs. Use cases have verbs. Actors have names, have nouns. So here's a sample, and it's a good way to start thinking about your use cases is to just start listing them. A use case name: submit subscription order, with a very brief description. Submit subscription renewal order, submit member profile change, place a new order, revise an order, cancel an order, make product inquiry, make a purchase history inquiry. These are typical use cases. You can give it a very brief, just start thinking about it in terms of the very brief description, and then you will start developing a document narrative. Right? So at first we do that high level, and then we expand it to a fully documented business requirement. So here is a sample narrative and one type of form that you can have. A use case name is really useful. Place new order. The author, of course, would be the person who did it, a date, a version. Tracking the version is really important if you're doing this in a big project with lots of people. It's really helpful. If you are doing this in a big organization, having a use case number is really helpful. It's usually some kind of a combination of codes and numbers. So, business use case 002, etc. Prioritizing may not be done right away, but there are some things that must happen before a system can go live, and so, or be useful to anyone. And so if you know it right away, you can make it high. If every priority is high, then that's a problem, but we'll talk about prioritizing a little bit later. Who is the primary business actor? Who are the other participating actors? Who might be interested stakeholders? Who might want to be notified that this event has happened? Marketing, procurement, management. And then the description. Then we want to say, what are steps? What are the steps? The club member provides his or her demographic information as well as order and payment information. The system responds by verifying that all required information has been provided. So that's basic editing, right? I just want to make sure that if everybody's filled in everything right. It verifies the information against what they already have. For each product order, it validates the identity. For each product ordered, the system verifies the product availability. So I make sure that I know what this product is. I make sure that we have the product here. For each available product, the system determines the price. So I want to go and verify that the price is as expected. The system will determine the total cost. The system checks the status of the club member's account. I think I would do that earlier in the process. I think I would put that here. I would make sure the person was, before I did all that other work, if everybody's already ordered that, put that information in. Verify the payment, etc., etc. You can see a very detailed list of things that need to happen. There might be alternatives. So what happens if all of these steps can't be completed? The club member did not provide all the information necessary. The club member is notified of the discrepancy and prompted to resubmit. The club member information is different. It's prompted to update their account, etc. This use case concludes. It's good to know when the use case is over. This use case concludes when the club member receives confirmation of the order. What happens after the post condition? The order has been recorded, and if the ordered products are available, they are released. For any things that aren't in stock, a back order is created. And then there are business rules. Cash or checks will not be accepted, or will not be accepted. They'll be returned, club member, blah, blah, blah. There's lots of these details. There may be constraints and specifications. Sorry. Open issues. This is a really important thing. There might be things that you cannot resolve right away. That doesn't mean that you don't want to do the use case or say that this is, we can't, we want to track issues. So the issue in this case is that there needs to be a way to determine how distribution centers are assigned. Right? That is a decision that has to be made. That's another use case that has to be taken care of. We don't know how to do it now. We know that it's important, but it doesn't stop us from thinking through this process. We just want to note that we don't know. If we go back up, right? So here's the step that is in. The system records the order for the information and releases the order to the appropriate distribution center. We don't know how to do that yet. We know it needs to be done. We're going to just track it here. As mentioned previously, we can use the use cases for project management to drive the entire development effort. We can build the system based on the use cases, right? We can use this to actually build the system. We can say these 25 use cases need to be put together for our very first release of the software. These next 20 functions will be in our second release. We can use this, we can rank and evaluate the importance of these use cases. We can make a dependency diagram of the use cases, and we can use that to build our system, build the system and release the system. Now, for what we're doing, we won't particularly do this, but this is why people really like use cases, because they help us determine the priority of development and how we can be efficient in our resources, and how we can get product out, get software developed and out to help users more quickly. So generally we develop the most important use cases first, but sometimes, even then it's hard to tell what's the most important. But we want to evaluate use cases based on a set of criteria. And this is a very reasonable and useful set of criteria. This is a really significant use case. It impacts our whole design. This is an easy to implement and contains significant functionality. This is a risky, time-critical, or complex function. This one we don't really know that much about. We have to do a lot of research on it. This is a primary business function, will increase revenue or decrease costs. Right, so we want to evaluate these. I have worked on a set of use cases for a project that I am working with the Dominican IT department and the GSLIS faculty to help our students manage the output of their scholarship, that is the papers and assignments and projects that they work on, for an end of their for a process we call the e-portfolio. So at the end of everyone in GSLIS, at the end of their studies, as one of their final acts, they develop an electronic portfolio of all of their work and relate it to the learning outcomes of the program. They write an essay, they develop a website, they assemble all of this data. And one of the things that students have told us is that it's hard for them, especially as they're beginning the program, to know what's important and know where things are and how they come to be, or how they can manage their materials. And so we've thought about developing or purchasing a data management system to help students with that. And so I've been working to develop a set of use cases for this. And so you can go to, there's a link on the Canvas page, and this is the link. It's a Google Doc with a set of use cases. So feel free to take a look at those. They might help you as you are thinking through the use cases for your system. There will be a video on the Canvas page that will discuss the specifics of the assignment and what forms to use, etc. But this could be very helpful. We're going to spend just a few minutes talking about prototyping, which is another way to help develop the functional requirements. And this is a process by which we get those initial requirements, right? So we get that set of stuff that we've, from the interviews, from the our data gathering process, our requirements and gathering process. And we just start building a little system. We design it. We make a prototype. We get customer evaluation. It gets reviewed and update, and on and on and on. It's this cycle, till the customer is satisfied. Then it goes into full development, gets tested, and then goes on to the normal maintenance life cycle of a system. This is yeah. So this is the prototype model, an iterative design, building a prototype, building a little skeleton of a system till a user says that it's good. So what you do is you just build this rudimentary version of a system. It's a very, not can be, it is, it is a repetitive process, an iterative process. It's sort of its own system development lifecycle model. It can be part of another one, but generally it just, if you're going to do prototyping, it really is the center of the life cycle. You can use it with any of those data gathering techniques we talked about in previous videos. The goal of this is to verify and validate requirements. That is, we want to make sure that when people see what they've talked about, they see it in action. They see it in action. They see screens. The thing is that you don't always do all the work, right? You're doing a rudimentary version. So you might build the user interface form, and every time they hit enter, I mean, you've done sort of a scenario, and every time you hit enter, data is just automatically put in. There's no real processing behind it. So it's often hard for users to actually tell what's exactly going on behind the scenes. But it's supposed to help you develop concrete specifications for the real system. And so the benefit is that you should be able to go from those early requirements, all that data that you get, to a working version of the system. And that the requirements and the prototype will generate more requirements, right? Once they see it, they'll want the modifications, or they'll generate the additional requests, and it allows for a deeper analysis of the requirements, a deeper interaction with the users on the requirements. It's really useful when things aren't clear. If it's really foggy and people can't exactly know what they want to have done, it's kind of helpful to have people be able to see it. You can't have a large group of people working on this. It gets really messy. If things are really complicated and people can't visualize how things are going to work. If there's, communication problems, etc. The problem is that you don't really get formal documentation. If a developer and users and the analysts are sitting together and they're throwing around ideas and developing new systems, things change really quickly, and you don't really come up with a document that people can say, oh, we added this function on this date, and it was really useful to us to have that. It can be very difficult to adapt. It's hard to make this life cycle work multiple times. It's hard to integrate sometimes these prototype systems with other existing systems. Some of the checks and balances of a system's development life cycle are ignored or bypassed. One of the real problems is that people think that once the prototyping is done, they have a real system, and what they basically have is smoke and mirrors, right? It's almost like a trick. When the prototyping, it's just the interface, a little bit of HTML or a little bit of other code that's just making it looks like it works when there's nothing really behind it. So the whole guts of the system have yet to be developed but there's a user interface and people think it's done. That's a really significant issue. For your assignment for this session, you are to build use cases for your system. There are additional videos to help you with that process. Please let me know if you have questions. Talk to you soon.